And when rapid speed down to 2,500.
Point for heavy, reduce speed to 180.
BlackBox.
Yeah, I got the thumbs up over there. So, hey, welcome back to the podcast. On today's episode, I have a neighbor friend of mine who's also in a great fraternity with me. And Luke, man, wait a minute for us.
Oh, we're supposed to wait?
You're supposed to wait.
Oh, I'm super sorry.
Jeez, the Marines. So
Can't take them anywhere.
here we go. This is a friend of mine, the fabulous Lieutenant Colonel Luke Jacobs. Retired.
Yeah.
Fighter pilot extraordinaire. You flew Harriers in the Marine Corps.
I did, yes.
Which are machines that aren't like normal jets, and I'll let him talk to us about that in a little bit. But thanks so much for being on the show with me today, and thanks for jumping ahead of me with the Johnny Walker there.
I was just making sure you didn't put anything in it.
Well, good. Yeah, so we're straight, right?
We're straight. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. You know, two Marines. I had another friend from Arizona who is the author of The Last Marine. I'll have to give you that book to read while you're flying.
Does it have a lot of pictures, big words?
Big word, written in crayon.
Oh, sweet. Okay, good.
So Travis Ransdell, shout out to Travis. T.S. Ransdell's his pseudonym book author name, I guess. Is that the way you're supposed to say it, guys? But he's the author of The Last Marine.
Oh, cool.
Which is not you or I.
No, thank
obviously.
God.
Yeah, jeez. So, but, you know, as we start out our podcast, I always like to salute our nation's military and those that serve. So, sir, salute to you and all those fly boys in the Marine Corps.
And to the Marines.
To the Marines and the rest of you fags. You service members.
Other service members.
Other service
Sister
members.
services.
Sister services. Cheers to you. Thank you for your service.
That's good stuff.
I'm a fan of blended scotch.
Scotch.
Love scotch.
Anchorman got it right.
That's right. The scotch. In San Diego. Wells vagina. Right?
Okay, so glad that we can say bad words because Amy, my lovely wife, scolded me as I walked out the door. She's like, you better watch your mouth.
Yeah, don't say curse words.
Yeah.
Well, you know, as a great Baptist minister's son, recovering Baptist, you know, every once in a while I let a few words fly, and my current pastor, Pastor Clayton, usually critiques me, gets after. I'm going to have him on the podcast one day, and my goal is to make him cuss.
Well, that's not
Just
hard.
kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. So we've got a new clock on the wall now to help, you know, us Marines that have a hard time with telling time to keep us on track here. So we got an hour to get through this and hear some amazing Marine stories and then talk about you. There's never really a retired Marine or a previous Marine or prior Marine, but you are separated from service now. Mm-hmm. You're a pilot. For flying the big boys, the 777, right?
Yeah, Boeing 777.
What is that like compared to a Harrier?
Well, it's just totally different. I mean, you're talking about the difference between football and baseball.
Okay.
You know, football, you know, like being in the Marine Corps, there's some hard hits. There's always some type of action. There's some lull, but there's things always going on. And I equate the Boeing 777 to baseball. It's a long game. It's a marathon. Okay. Things don't happen very fast, and if they do, you probably screwed something up, and then you need to fix it right now. But the Harrier, she was always keeping you very busy. She's a very attentive, you know, needy lady in your life, and the Boeing 777 really doesn't care if you're in there or not.
It flies itself.
It all but flies itself. Yeah. Minor corrections here and there. It is interesting. It's a unique challenge now because I'm not used to sharing. I'm not a good sharer of the controls. And having people in the cockpit with me is kind of different, but I'm enjoying it. It's definitely a challenge because, you know, landing at 2 a.m. after an 18-hour flight from one of our longest flights is Bahrain, Hong Kong, and then we sit around for a couple hours, and then Hong Kong to Incheon. And typically we're landing in Incheon at about 4 a.m. Jeez. So it's almost a 20-hour day when it's all said and done.
So when you're flying a massive machine like the 777, and Boeing has taken it on the chin
They have.
over the last 2 years with, what went on with the MAX, the 737 MAX.
Yeah,
right?
737 MAX, yeah.
But that's back in the air now.
It is. And it's, it's just like anything in aviation. It's complicated, software. But I've been flying Boeing aircraft my whole career, and I have the utmost faith in that company. They put out a really good product.
Yeah.
And they really do put a good instructional package together for us, because pilots are basically trained monkeys, like lights and beeps and squeaks. And I feel really well trained. And the thing lands like a dream. It's probably the easiest thing I've ever landed in my life.
You were telling me the other night that the 777, unlike probably most aircraft that you've been in, it can pretty much fly itself, right?
It does.
You're just
on other
monitoring controls.
As soon as we get on the runway, you go full power. You literally hit a button to get full power out of the engines, and then you rotate. You do have to make it come off the ground.
So rotate. Explain that.
Rotate. So you put your hands on the yoke, and once we hit a set
10
speed,
degrees.
Well, so it depends, right? So the Boeing 777's pretty close to 750,000 pounds at max gross takeoff. So if we're max gross takeoff weight and it's cold out, we're probably going to be at about 160, 170 knots, which is almost 200 miles an hour.
Jeez. On the ground.
On the ground. And it takes a long time. It takes like 1.5 miles to get up to that airspeed.
Holy cow.
And you're on this 13,000-foot runway, and you're just watching the numbers go by, and you're like, okay, I got 10,000 feet of runway left, 5,000 feet of runway left, about 3,000 feet of runway left. We take the stick and we start slowly pulling it off the ground because you don't want to, even though boxes don't bitch, you don't want to,
throw them to the back of the aircraft.
You don't want to break chains and stuff like that. So it's a nice smooth pull on the yoke, which is the control stick, back to your about halfway, and then you get the nose up to about 10, 12 degrees. And then basically at 200 feet, you hit autopilot. And at 400 feet, you hit lateral navigation. And now it's just more of a monitoring thing because the aircraft, you have programmed the entire flight from Bahrain to Hong Kong. And she knows where she needs to go.
So what about when the tower, and I've got like 43 hours in a little Cessna, so I've got some time some time under my belt.
I mean, we're basically right on the same page.
Okay, right? Yeah, I'm pretty close to flying a 777 now, So... Such bullshit. But all I can remember is flying with my instructor, and we went over to Norfolk, which was really busy.
Yeah.
Compared to like LaGuardia or Chicago or so. And he's like, dude, don't ever be a little Cessna pilot flying in those. They're probably not going to let you land.
More than likely, they're going to laugh at you.
Yeah. So you're getting these instructions that, hey, okay, you've taken off, go out to 2,000 feet.
Turn left heading 270, climb 4,000 feet.
And hold.
Well, yeah. So with the Boeing 777, in the cargo world and even in the passenger world, we know our departures beforehand. So they're called SIDs, Standard Instrument Departures. Yeah. So when we ask for clearance, so this kind of goes for everybody, if you fly United, Delta, whatever. Let's say you're sitting in here in Norfolk and you're going to go to Boston. Your pilots up there are talking to clearance delivery. Hey, this is, Delta 777-1. Hey, looking for instrument release to Boston. Okay, hey, here's your departure clearance as filed, fly, maintain. 7. So they give you all that stuff before you take off.
Okay.
Hey, climb to 2,000 feet, left turn 270, expect radar vectors on course. But what's interesting is in the Harrier, we would get that too, but you're by yourself. And so you're having to talk, turn, twist, do all this stuff, and have a wingman who's probably, asleep at the wheel, and, I'm yelling at him to get information.
And he's literally flying off your wing. When you say wingman, that means he's looking maybe his left or right.
Yeah, he's looking, typically I always liked him on my right-hand side so I could,
you're starboard? Is that what you would call it?
Starboard if you're in the Navy, if you're in the military. So I would look out my right-hand side, and, he's about 3 feet off my wingtip, and I could look right down my wing.
So you're no kidding. Really, 3 feet?
3 to 5 feet is where you want him, especially if we're in weather, so he can stay in sight. And then if it was good weather...
Okay, back up.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in weather.
Yeah, which is crazy, right? Which defies logic.
Yeah.
But... So when we're in aircraft that don't have radar, the only way that you and I could fly together and get into somewhere together, because we want to avoid two airplanes operating by themselves, because what happens if he loses his radio? Right. Or he gets spatial D, and he gets disoriented. So
Is it spatial D like special dumb? Like, I mean, was he like go dumb in the air?
It's called the leans, right? So, when you're flying straight, and let's say you put a real easy turn to the left and you leave it in, and it's not enough to activate your inner ears, you can actually convince your brain that you're flying straight, but you're actually in a turn. Or if you're in a turn and you ease it out really easy.
Is that what they think happened to JFK Jr.?
It happens a lot. It's actually one of the major causes of accidents, military and civilian, especially at night and in the weather, because you're so reliant on the instruments. And if you are looking outside, I've actually gotten the leans really bad where I was joining on a tanker, Omega tanker. It's this really awesome civilian guy that has this white, I don't know why it's white. It's a big white 707. And we're at about 30,000 feet. We're right here in Yuma, Arizona. Well, not here, but obviously Yuma, Arizona. We're at what I call, my backyard. And we're at 30,000 feet, no pressure. We're just going to get some gas. But we're in the weather. Like, we're in the clouds. And I'm like, what? At first, you can't find a white airplane in clouds. Yeah. Finally, we find her. We join up on her. But she's just doing these big circles. And so when we're in the basket, we're at about 20 degrees angle of bank. And after about 20 minutes of getting gas at a 20-degree angle of bank, kind of like this, I kind of eased it out. And my brain just went scrambled. No exaggeration. I thought it was tumbling. My brain just was like, what are we doing? Yeah. And so what you have to do then in the Navy and the Marine Corps is really good about training us to this standard is immediately get on your instruments, and you have to trust the And this goes back to my earlier statement about why I trust Boeing. Yeah. I've had a couple of these situations at night in combat, at night around the ship, where you just have to trust that these things built by the lowest bidder are going to get you through and get you home.
That's scary to think. The lowest bidder is keeping you safe.
And it's only 20, 30-year-old technology. But in all seriousness, like, I got on my instruments, and it took me about almost 10 minutes for me to be like, I am flying straight and level. Like, I thought I was to the right, like always turning right, but I was actually flying straight. And my wingman's like, are you okay? And I literally was heads down flying. I was like, hey, man, I really got a bad case of the leans. So he came up, joined on me. I gave him the lead, and I started looking at his airplane. It's kind of like seasick. Like, if I could look at something not inside the cockpit, it actually helped with my brain basically rebooting and then trying to get reestablished. Yeah. So it happens to everyone.
I've got a buddy who flew for Atlas, now is at UPS, and he was my instructor in my little Cessna training. And I love flying, by the way, so I want to get back.
We need to go.
I would love to. And take Ian up with us with a camera. Yeah. Get some pictures of Hampton Road, which is a really beautiful area we live in.
It's one of my favorite, because I did that commercial flight instruction about a year ago. One of my favorite things to do is do the bay and then run down Virginia Beach all the way down to Ocracoke.
To get the most expensive cheeseburger?
Yeah. As long as my students were buying, I was okay with it.
Yeah, right. That's a lot of fun. But he took me up on a personal flight. I'm in the left seat, and I'm able to pretend like I really know what I'm doing, and I'm flying, and he takes us up into, probably shouldn't put this on the air, but he'll forgive me. We fly through some clouds, and flying through these clouds, I can't see anything. And he says, look, I just want you to know that this is what you do at the commercial.
Yeah, this is what the next level.
And he says, usually you'd put these little glasses on that you would just depend. He goes, what I want you to do is just fly the monitor, fly the magenta lines, right? And so I'm just flying this area. He says, do not look up. Don't look outside. Just trust the instruments, and you're going to fly out of these clouds. And it tested my resolve.
Yeah, it totally does.
To be like, okay, because I had all these feelings like I was going up when I was really going down,
or straight and level. I mean, that's the scary is where you're like, what? We're all over the place. Oh no, I'm just hanging out right where I'm supposed to be at. Yeah, it's that's why I think flying is so unique, and that some of the best weather, I've had some scary moments, and then the worst weather, like you're just like, man, I hope these instruments are tight. We were flying over the Pacific Ocean. We're off the ship, the USS Boxer.
God, this makes me want to drink.
And it was, we'd been flying. We're headed westbound to go to Iraq. This is back in 2007, and we're just doing some training. So me and my wingman. It's been pretty poor weather for the last couple of days. So like a lot of gray skies, And so we take off, we punch through the clouds, and, now we got the sun right in our face, kind of like these white lights in here. And we're like, oh, man, this feels good. And so we're like, hey, let's do what's called a butterfly set, where we turn basically 180 degrees tail on, and we drive out to about 40 miles. So now we have 80 miles split. And then we turn back to each other, and we can do some radar work and kind of do an intercept and pretend to shoot each other. So we're about almost 100 miles away from each other. We call fights on. And in the turn, I lose my generator. And I'm probably about 150 miles away from the ship right now.
So what is a generator in a fighter?
Well, the generator, just like your car, supplies all the electrical power to all our maps and our TACANs, and everything I need to get home is now gone.
Oh, crap.
And I'm at about 25,000 feet. So
over water.
Over water. The nearest divert is 1,200 miles away. I need to find the ship. I need to find my little gray floating prison, and I need to find it soon. But my wingman's over 100 miles away. I can't talk to him, because I need to fire up my auxiliary power unit, APU. So I need to descend. And, we had some rules that, hey, unless you're in visual, you can't descend. So I'm like, well, I'm descending because I need to fire this thing. But I realized, if this thing doesn't work, I'm kind of out of luck. Right,
yeah, you're going swimming.
I'm gonna fly around, start paddling around, looking for this boat. That, by the way, she's not at anchor. She's driving at 20 knots westbound, and she wasn't where she was 20 minutes ago when we launched. Luckily, my wingman wasn't a total ding dong, and he found me. So I just kind of went lame duck. He came and joined on me, and I couldn't get my radios to work again. So now I'm Nordo, lost comm, unable to transmit, unable to receive.
Wow.
And so I flashed
You're
light.
giving him hand signs.
I'm giving him hand signals, and I'm throwing my hands up in the cockpit. And he's like, "Okay, I think I've, Warren. My call sign's Warren. Warren's got some issues. I need to drag him home." And this is again where we fly in really tight formation. So we had to punch through about 8,000 feet of weather. And so he's coming in. I'm just on his wing because if I lose sight, I don't know where the ship is. I'm assuming the ship's off our nose because it feels like we're doing a straight in, but I can't hear. I can't talk, so I really am very low situational awareness.
What's the jet noise like at that altitude?
Oh, it's a loud. So the thing with the Harrier is that we sit like, no kidding, like the back of your seat right here, about 6 inches behind that is the intake. It's loud, even with with your helmet on and then hearing protection on. It's loud. I mean, it's very loud. I've sat in a Hornet. I've done a flight in a Hornet, and it's like a Cadillac, and we're more like a Jeep from like 68. It's just loud. It kind of rumbles around. You know when the engine's running, and when the engine's not running, which I had that. That's a totally different story. But I had the engine quit on me one time. And that was that was a very exciting moment in my life. But yeah, so we're coming back into the ship, and we're in the weather, and we punch out of the clouds at about 500 feet, and there's Mother. That's the nickname for the ship. And so I see Mom, and I got it, and I land. And then the radios start working. It's pretty awesome.
And they're like, yeah, bullshit, Warren.
But it was good. I mean,
you didn't turn the flanky on.
Yeah, you gotta, left, right,
the
AB.
Combobulator.
Yeah, but it was one of those moments where I was like, man, this jet, that's one of the moments where I actually learned to trust the jet. Even when she's not working properly, she's gonna try to bring me back home.
Wow.
Yeah.
So take me back to young Warren, young Lieutenant Jacobs. Now, let's even go back a little further because you were a college athlete. You played a little football, right?
Oh, swam.
You swam.
I swam. Yeah.
I
played football in high school.
Football in high school. That's
I played football in high school. I ran track. I wrestled.
Wrestled?
Wrestling. I just like saying wrestling. I played all the sports but where I was really pretty good at was swimming.
So, was there ever any thought of being a naval pilot? Why did you choose the Marine Corps?
Well, that's a funny story. So I was in high school. And I actually didn't want to join the Navy or the Marine Corps. I actually wanted to join the Air Force, right? Or the Army, because my mom's side of the family was all Army. And my grandfather was D-Day, Omaha Beach, second wave. And he hated the Marine Corps, hated the Navy, called them sister services. And, I knew I was going to be in the service. I knew from early on, I want to fly fighters. And I knew the Marine Corps had jets, but I didn't really know much about it. But I was in an Air Force town. I'm from Albuquerque, with Kirtland Air Force Base, and we had F-16s there. And I'd see the F-16s.
Those are cool jets.
Amazing jets. And their squadron was called the Flying Tacos. And I'm like, well, I just want to be a Flying Taco. How cool would that be? But yeah, so I knew I wanted to fly, and I thought I had a better chance in the Air Force. And I really wasn't interested in going on ships because it sounds awful, and it is. So I was in high school, and I had applied to the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy ROTC programs. And so this Marine, who was a staff sergeant, and I'll never forget his name, Staff Sergeant Cloberdance, he walked up to me, and he was trying to recruit my buddy, who was on the fence going Army or Marine Corps. And so I was kind of like, egging him on a little bit. I know you're shocked that I, talk a little smack every once in a while. And he was like, well, I just don't think you have what it takes. And I was like, okay, well, what's your PFT, physical fitness test? He's like, it's 3 miles, 20 pull-ups, and 100 sit-ups. Back in the day when we did real sit-ups, not the crunches thing.
Right.
And I was like, I'll beat you. He's like, no, you won't. I was like, no, I guarantee you, I'll beat you. Name the place and the time and the day, I'll be there. Like, I'll beat you, and I'll beat you twice. And he was like, okay. And so we did it, and I beat, and I hadn't run 3 miles. I don't think I ever strung together 3 miles. I was a sprinter in track. I would do like the quarter mile. It was like the furthest I would run. So I did. I beat him. I did my 20 pull-ups. I did my 100 sit-ups, and I beat him by about 15 seconds. Only because I was like, I can't.
Little did you know that dude was recruiting you.
Oh, little did I know he was
reeled in,
doing exactly what Marine Corps recruiters do. Be like, you can't cut it. And then after that, he's like, well, okay, great. You did PFT. You beat me. So what? You're 17 years old. I'm like 27. Like, congratulations. And then he kind of worked me for a few months. And then finally he was like, hey, are you even going to take the Navy scholarship? And I was like, no, I'm going to join the Air Force. I'm going to go fly F-16s or F-15s. And he goes, well, hey, just do me a favor. Give me the quota and just sign this paper right here. Just sign this paper right here. Yeah. And just take the Marine option. And I win. You don't have to take it. It's no harm, no foul. And I was like, okay, I'm not taking it, though.
That's awesome.
And little did I know. And then I told my mom, who, like you were at my retirement, she was not particularly pleased that I was even entertaining the Marine Corps. And then I told my grandfather, who had just had a stroke and was in his bed, and he almost got out of his bed and whipped my butt. Like, I'm not exaggerating. Like, he was bigger. He's bigger than me, 6'2", about 210, just lean as a whistle. And he almost got out of bed to whip me. Wow. He was like, you will not join the Marine Corps. I'm like, okay, just everyone chill out. I'm not doing it. I just did it to get this guy off my back. And then the Navy, the Air Force and the Army assigned me schools that I didn't want to go to and degrees that I didn't really want. The Army wanted me to be an aerospace engineer. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And the Air Force offered me.
Although you're an aviator now.
Yeah, the irony. This is all like irony. Looking back like 30 years ago, I'm like, I was such an idiot. But and then the Air Force said I had to go to University of New Mexico. No, they said I had to be an electrical engineer, and I could only get a 3-year scholarship. But the Marine Corps was like, here's your 4-year scholarship. We don't care what you get your degree in, but you have to go to University of New Mexico. As I used to call it, University Near Mommy, which I didn't want to go to. I'm like, well, this is easy. I don't want to go to UNM, so I just won't take the scholarship. And then as the spring kind of went, the more I looked at it, the more I started. Yeah. And the staff sergeant was still kind of working me a little bit. And then one day I was like, you know what? I think I might be Marine material. I like the uniforms. I mean, come on. Who doesn't like the Marine Corps uniform?
Exactly right.
I don't want to look like a Greyhound bus driver. Sorry, Air Force. Your uniforms are terrible.
The United Air.
Yeah, I mean
United Airlines uniform.
Yeah. Not even. I think United looks better. They look like Greyhound bus drivers.
And my father-in-law is going to kill me. By the way, he's
that's right, because he's
pilot.
a fighter guy in
thug
Air Force.
guy. Yeah.
By the way, those guys were real pilots. I'm just a simple 2000 guy.
Hey, let's do this real quick. I got noise in my ear. We gotta thank sponsors.
Oh yeah,
for a minute.
totally.
So. My financial services firm basically underwrites the big part of this podcast and finances it for BlackBox. So got to say a little thank you there to Kenneth Porter and Company. Sane, sound, simple financial strategies, Luke. So, I when I started this company, it was like thinking like a Marine. You got to be smart enough to listen, dumb enough to do it. And so these sane, sound, simple strategies that we use at Kenneth Porter and Company, if you have a little bit of money and you have a little bit of financial acumen, give us a call. Let us have a conversation with you and figure out if we can help you move from where you are to where you want to be with sane, sound, simple strategies. How's that, Kenneth Porter and Company? How's that for a commercial?
Sounds great.
And you wanted to throw a plug in for our other sponsor.
Yes, the Miller House Coffee. And as a Marine, hanging out with Navy guys and their terrible coffee. I know what terrible coffee is. Miller House coffee is some of the best coffee I've ever had, and I'm not exaggerating.
That's awesome.
And
that's
I'm not
my
sponsored.
son-in-law and daughter.
We always hope that a magical bag will show up on our doorstep because my wife is very finicky with her coffee, and I'll drink pretty much anything. But this stuff is really good. I highly, highly recommend it. And I'm not sponsored, so I'm not getting anything out of this except for maybe
we do give you a cigar and a few drinks.
That's
every
true.
once in a while, so.
Only one drink.
One drink. Yeah, we've been. Yeah.
But awesome coffee, and it's a great story on how she does it. And you guys roast it right in the garage, and I'm telling you, it's phenomenal coffee.
Good stuff. Big aspirations, big dreams. I'm a big fan of celebrating entrepreneurs and people who are starting up. Jeff Bezos started in the garage of his San Francisco apartment.
Steve Jobs
in the garage of his parents' house.
His parents' house. My father was owned his own business for 35 years, and a lot of his work ethic is what's made me successful. So I always
FedEx.
Yeah, FedEx, another
John
great
Smith,
story.
Another Marine.
Yeah. So we're not just good in the field.
Yeah, that's right. So taking you back, thanks for the shout out to Miller House Coffee and Kenneth Porter and Company. Check those firms out. Ian, is that good? Is that what we were supposed to do? Okay, got the thumbs up over there.
Approved.
Approved. That's our shot at trying to be paying homage to our sponsors that make these things happen. So, again, thanks for being on the show with us today and sharing some of these stories. Sorry to interrupt it.
Yeah.
So that we could pay the bills.
Yeah, we got to pay those bills.
Yeah.
But condense the story. But at the end of the senior year, I was just like, you know what? I'm going to join the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And I did 4 years at University of New Mexico ROTC program, and it was a great experience. And I did a couple of awesome things. I did Mountain Warfare School with 3-4 Battalion out of 29 Palms.
29 stumps.
The old stumps.
Yeah.
And I got to do everything that I wanted to do in the Marine Corps. And it just started literally on I don't want to do that.
Yeah. For me, it was very similar. I had an opportunity to play collegiate football, a small one at that. It wasn't like I was massively recruited, but my father was a pastor, so there was a school, Liberty University, Jerry Falwell, one of Jerry's kids.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so there was an opportunity for me to go play there and have a partial scholarship, athletic. And then my father being a pastor, they would give a lot of money back to pastors' kids to help pay for tuition. We definitely needed it.
Yeah.
But, as the story would play out, I found out that collegiate football meant bigger, stronger, faster. And that I wasn't really cut out like I thought I was to play that sport at the next level at that time. Yeah. Most of it mental. Most of it just in the gray matter. Yeah. Imagine Marines and
I tell my kids most of the things, the challenges in your life are probably at least 80% mental.
Yeah. And so I had the physical attributes. I mean, at the time I was like 215, 6 foot. Yeah. Ran like a 4.7 40.
Wow.
But I was lining up against a guy who was 6'6", 315, running a 4.4 40, and played in the NFL as a tight end. His name was Eric Green.
Whoa.
Yeah, this dude was a beast, and all you got to do is go look him up, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And little scrawny me, it was not a chance. And so I got depressed really quickly as a young 18, 19-year-old. And I was like, this is not for me. And I didn't want to go to school to study.
Oh, yeah.
So I dropped out in my freshman year. And my dad meets me at the door and says, well, you got 2 weeks to figure out what you're going to do with your life. Best thing my father ever did to me was to force me to go make a decision. Well, the Marine Corps happened to send a young staff sergeant home on recruiting duty for 10 days, who happened to be a guy that went to high school with me. His name was Alan Fellers. Alan shows up to church one Sunday in his dress blues. I don't even know if Alan remembers this, but it was Atlantic Shores Baptist Church in Chesapeake, Virginia. He shows up. I'm there checking out chicks, not listening to a sermon. And, he's like, hey, dude, what are you doing with your life? And I'm like, nothing. I dropped out of college. He's like, well, come check out what the Marine Corps has. And literally got me 2-3 days later to go on a delayed entry contract.
Wow.
And it was the best thing that ever happened in my life.
I really think that Marines in particular, and I have some joint time. I spent a lot of time with Air Force, Army, Navy. I spent a lot of time with Navy guys. I think that Marines in particular, we have that desire somewhere.
Yeah.
And it just takes a moment for that calling to hit us. Like, I'm telling you, I had zero desire to be a Marine. And now I look back 20 years later after my retirement, and I realize I would have been a miserable failure in the Air Force.
Yeah.
My personality would have totally not done well in the Air Force.
Yeah, I can't see you as a Marine. As a Marine, I can't see you as a airman or as a Air Force fighter pilot.
And I don't think I would have done very well in the Navy, because the Navy, especially in the officer ranks, there's a lot of politics. In the Marine Corps, and I really do think, I'm a Catholic, here or there practicing, but at the end of the day, I do think God has a plan for us.
Yeah.
And I think He plants some Marine Corps seeds in people that can do it.
Yeah.
And because I was pretty apprehensive about joining the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know much about it, because I read, what I knew was Baba Black Sheep. I knew,
That's an awesome show.
All the stories I read about, but I didn't really know a Marine, because my mom's side is all Army and my dad's side's all Navy. So that's the only stories I ever heard.
Yeah.
So I kind of had to trailblaze this on my own. But, looking back, the Marine Corps has really treated me well. We've had, just like anything, ups and downs like any relationship. But I was very blessed. My career was very good.
Well, I gave the Marine Corps some crap a few months ago, and I think I shared this with you, that, you and I were part of the greatest fraternity in the world, and I really do believe that. You can agree with this. I know that you meet a guy on the street, and you can just notice a Marine who at least had one contract under his belt.
Yep.
You can see it the way he carries himself, the way he behaves, and I can usually pick him out of a crowd. And most of us have the same goofy ass haircut. We can't get.
You
rid
mean
of
the one I just got today?
The one, and some of us by choice, some of us by design.
Yeah.
But I can usually spot them, pick them out. And I told my wife when you moved in across the street from us, I went, "Oh God, there goes the neighborhood, another freaking Marine." And
What did he tell you? You want to tell the people how you knew that? Because I was walking around with a rifle and a 6-pack of beer.
a 6-pack of beer, right? Screaming at your kids.
Yeah, I was not screaming. I was motivating them. It's totally different.
So, but in all seriousness, there is a different swagger, I guess you would call it, about
sure.
Marines. No matter the air wing, which you're kind of the nasty air wing, and I was the elite ground pounder.
Hey, customer service would only exist for the customer.
That's right. That's right.
But it's funny, because I got called out in my training. I was trying to fly under the radar, I was trying to be quiet. I show up to my ground school. I had let my hair grow out of hair. I had to shave. The company requires you to shave when you're at work. But I walk in the room, and there's what I've come to find out. There's 3 Army guys in there, and as soon as I walked in the room, they all pegged me as a Marine. And I wasn't wearing any Marine Corps stuff. I was very, very careful on not trying to be that Marine aviator that comes in and dominates the room, which I ended up doing. But I walked in, and no kidding, ended up being my sim partner. He's like, as soon as you walked in that door, he's like, I knew you were a Marine officer. He's like, the way you carried yourself, the way you kind of just walked in the room, you kind of looked around. And it's funny, because I don't feel like I do that. Yeah. But he's like, you sat down, and you're like, I'm sitting here. Yeah. He's like, everything that you did just screamed Marine Corps. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's funny, because I purposely was going out of my way to not do that in my first civilian job outside.
Well, the Marine Corps just empowers young men to take charge. And I don't care if you're a PFC or a general.
You're totally right.
You've been taught from OCS to Marine Corps boot camp to, hey, take charge. But, at first they're beating the crap out, not beating, well.
But motivating.
Motivating. Yeah. And, there's this esprit de corps that's really hard to explain.
It is one of those intangible things that Marines have that makes us unique. And having served in different joint commands, I would have Army guys come up and be like, you guys just have a thing. Yeah. Because I would see a Marine. I've never met this guy in my entire life. And after 5 minutes, we probably figured out how we either were deployed, or we knew a guy on that deployment, or I knew a guy on your deployment. And he was like, you guys are just a small frat house with guns. Yeah. And I was like, yes, it's, with girls and boys, it doesn't matter. I don't see any of that. I just see a bunch of Marines, and you're totally right. I walk into a room, And if they're all junior me, I take charge.
Yeah.
And I just make sure everyone gets fed, taken care of. And
I've got a bunch of team guys, SEAL team guys, and SWIC guys that are buddies and clients, and it's the closest thing I think to the Marine Corps and how they run their shops. Like the senior enlisted runs
everything.
The teams. Mm-hmm. In the Marine Corps, your senior enlisted, the officers are just there to sign the paychecks and dot the I's,
and
cross
keep
the
the
T's.
Cats in the right lane.
Right.
We just you come over here. We kind of I was a maintenance officer for 2 years, and Master Sergeant Saunders, Timothy Saunders, great American. He basically was like, "Sir, I got this.
Yeah,
go fly.
Yeah,
go plan. Go take the fight to the enemy. If I need you, I'll let you know." Right. And at first, I kind of bucked at that. I was like, I'm a major of Marines. Like this is my thing. And after about 2 weeks, I'm like, no, it's not my thing. It's actually not. It's his. Yeah. I'm just there to keep the cats in the box.
The A's.
Yeah. And it was great. And honestly, he taught me more about leadership than any officer has ever taught me.
Well, what was great? I was telling you this off camera today is shout out to Major Mike Polovic, who actually I think retires a colonel, maybe a brigadier general. I should know that about the good Mike
But that's
Polovic.
a good thing you don't know that. Honestly, that's an attribute to him.
Yeah.
That a compliment to him that he doesn't wear it.
Yeah. Well, he didn't. So when I was at Fast Company, part of Marine Corps Security Force Battalion, this guy, I was telling you, I was a corporal in the Marine Corps. The gunny had gotten relieved, and I basically had company gunny duties. And he empowered me to take charge of a billet, take charge of a position, and help keep the wheels on the bus. And that was one of the best moments in my life. I actually got a Navy Achievement Medal for that.
Yeah. As you should.
Yeah. And he was just like, look, Porter, this is what I need you to do. And he's the one that said to me, be smart enough to listen and just dumb enough to take the orders. And that's really what I just tried to emulate the rest of my time. And anytime I approached something new, it was like, I can do this. I just need to be smart enough to listen to the instruction. Yeah. And then go, that's why I love flying. It's like the plane will not lie to you.
No. Generally, no.
You do all of these steps that they've trained you to do, and you'll get home safely. Yeah. Break the rules, and she will punish you.
Or do what things that airplanes say is no to. Airplane talks back.
The airframe is like, you put too many G's on this little frame, and it'll splinter up like a toothpick. So let's take that back to flying for a few minutes.
Yeah.
In the Marine Corps, tell me some of the scariest moments inside of Harrier.
Oh man,
that you can remember.
I as a Harrier guy, when I selected Harriers, my wife was super upset. I was number 2 in my class. I thought I was going to get Hornets Miramar in California.
You were first place loser in your class. Huh?
It was me and another Marine, Rob T. McDonald. He got a Silver Star, great American.
Oh, wow.
I could tell stories about him. He's probably one of the greatest Americans I've ever served with. And we both thought we were going to get Hornets, like the choice, right? Because we had crushed it. And the instructor comes up to us. He's like, all right, boys, I know what you want, but the Marine Corps has said otherwise, and you're getting Harriers. So I came home. I was a little upset, but I was like, I'm still super excited. This is First Lieutenant Jacobs. I'm just stoked to be here.
By the way, when you're telling the story, can you guys get a Harrier? What frame do they need to look up on YouTube to show?
You can just look up AV-8B Harrier 2, just AV-8B Harrier, and you'll find basically the best pictures on the internet.
Can you guys put it on the screen up here so as we're talking, we can kind of have some frame of reference?
You can put in a couple squadrons. VMA 311, the Tomcats, that's a great squadron. VMA 513, Flying Nightmares, no longer with us. The Marine Corps decided to decommission that squadron.
Wow.
That was my first squadron. I was fortunate to go to war with her. 311, I was going to war. And then I was very fortunate to be in VMA 214, Pappy Boyington squadron.
The Pappy Boyington, yeah. So let's talk about that one a little bit.
Oh, man. But
I got you off track a little bit.
We're all over the place. We're like scattershot right now.
It's the Johnny.
It probably is, which that was delicious, by the way. So First Lieutenant Jacobs just super stoked to be here. I get Harriers. I go home. Wife is not happy because all she's heard is it's the Widowmaker, it's this, it's the Lawn Dart, And I was like, look, honey, it's fine. I'm an excellent pilot. I'll never have problems. My third solo in the jet. I'm coming in. I'm flying with this grumpy XO. I mean, just a stereotypical XO just yells at you all the time. And you're like, I don't even know why he's yelling at me. I would try not to make eye contact with him. We go out to Friday afternoon sortie. We're doing some basic.
Help people understand what a sortie is.
A sortie is just basically pilot lingo for an event, a flying event that for from takeoff to landing. So
a mission of sorts.
Yeah. So basically, it's just if I say, "Hey, I had 2 sorties today," that means I did 2 takeoffs and 2 landings.
Okay, got it.
Vice, if I hit the air-to-air tanker, I just would have 1 sortie because I just have 1 takeoff. It's basically how we count peanuts. You know, oh, hey, you did 1 sortie today. Boop. That's how we kind of bin it out.
Yeah.
I try not to use the word mission because that implies we're taking the fight to the enemy.
Got it.
A sortie implies kind of training.
Okay.
So we go out on a training sortie. It's Friday afternoon. We go out, nothing, Lieutenant Jacobs is just learning, trying to get the jet to where she needs to be. And we come in, we're going to do a vertical landing. I'm solo. There's very few 2-seat Harriers, but, we're training to be single-seat guys because that's what we are. And so in the brief, he said, hey, we're going to do vertical landings. We're going to do a touch and go, and then we're going to come back around and do a vertical landing. He's like, I'll land first so I can monitor your landings because you suck. I'm like, okay.
So vertical landings, for those who don't know about this jet, you have a couple of options.
Yeah, we have 5 types of landings we can do in Harrier. We can do a conventional landing like you see every other normal
commercial jet comes in, long runway.
We use that for emergencies, for fires and stuff like that. You come in scorching hot, about 170, 160 knots. We can do what's called, we have 2 types of called variable nozzles where you can set the power and then move the nozzles around to control the speed. You have auto flap and stow flaps, and some of that, it depends on the environment. And then we have what's called a fixed nozzle slow.
There we go.
Oh, hey, look at that. I actually know that guy. I was there.
How do you know that from, I can barely see that jet.
Oh, because it says 2008 Marine Corps.
Oh, you're looking at the top.
Yeah,
okay,
because your son-in-law, he's a smart guy. He's a smart guy.
He is very smart.
But yeah, so then we can do what's
Jacobs
called
coming in a close second there with the name like Jacobs.
Yeah. And then we have a fixed nozzle slow, which is basically kind of a standard landing, and then a rolling vertical landing, and then my favorite is the vertical landing. So
viewers are watching this right now, right, guys? So while we're talking, they're
I'll put it up.
you will.
So right now, this is actually the first air show that I did back in 2008 in Miramar, and actually it's the first time my wife ever saw me fly an airplane.
No kidding.
And she's right there at center stage with my 2-year-old daughter. And
that is still mind blowing. That plane is at basically a vertical
zero airspeed.
Zero airspeed.
Near zero. Right now I'm backing up. So I'm coming in. I'm going to do this vertical landing, right? And we have, a lot of people don't know this, we have 500 pounds of distilled water in the jet. It's like a poor man's afterburner. But when you come in for a vertical landing, you might be what's called wet dependent or dry. So if wet dependent means you have to have water and it has to flow in order for your airplane to stay in the air. If not, things are going to go sideways very quickly. So I tell her, hey, sir, I'm wet dependent. I'm like a 700-pound thrust dry, and I'm like 2,000 pounds wet. Basically, I'm telling him, here's my performance. Here's what the jet can do. He goes, okay, just be wet. Just do your good water check. No big deal. So I do my water check. As I'm coming in, deaccelerating down to 0 knots over the pad, what I failed to notice, because I was a new guy, my scan was absolutely terrible, the pump froze. And so the water was no longer flowing.
Oh, God.
And so she could hold a hover just fine. But when I pulled the power to land and then I added power, I distinctly remember, and this was almost 20 years ago, I remember my stomach coming up into my throat. And I'm like, man, this does not feel right. And so I slam the power to full power. I go through the stops. I basically torched this brand new motor.
Okay.
I go back up to 50 feet. I stabilize. And I remember my one instructor, Mookie Blaylock, basically said, hey, if you ever go through the limiters, try to reset it so you can have it again. And so I remember that. The monkey remembered that, so I reset it. And then the pump started flowing again. So everything's good, land, and the XO's like, hey, let's go to, park the jets and we'll go debrief. And, as we're taxiing, he goes, man, that was not good. I was like, and the airplane, like literally shaking because I almost died in my brain. And, we go in there and he starts looking at the tapes and he goes, did you not realize the water was not flowing? I'm like, nah, I don't know. And then they ended up having to pull the motor. It cost the taxpayers about $12 million. And then they pulled the data. It wasn't my fault. The pump froze, and there was really no way for me to know that unless I noticed this one little tiny light in the upper right-hand corner of the glare shield. But it was a lesson to me that, hey, this airplane's going to try to kill you. So
That's crazy.
It was a good lesson learned. And then I had a night in Iraq. Some of my scariest landings were in combat, actually.
They put up another video.
Oh man, look at that good-looking dude. That is one good-looking guy right there.
And you're chafing there, huh?
Flares. Those are flares. See, where am I at? That is over. That's over Afghanistan. That was over Kajaki Dam.
Dam.
Yeah, we were over. That was Afghanistan, VMA 513. That was back in 2011.
So why are you shooting out little?
We wanted to let Tally know we were there.
Okay.
And we had some Marines on the ground, and they said, "Hey, can you just, without doing a show of force, come down 500 feet? Just, hey, can you let, Tally know that you're around?" So I'd put out a couple.
So you were pulling the Mike Tyson on him.
It would have happened to any fighter because at this particular point I was throwing. What can I say?
You're about to put some bombs on
I was hoping
him, huh?
to pick a fight that day.
Yeah.
We were doing some overhead for some guys on the ground doing patrols, and they said, "Hey, can you just let everybody know you're here?" So we put up a couple flares out just because you can see the smoke trails pretty good. Because you can't see the airplane. We were at about 18,000 feet. You can't see the airplane, but you can see the smoke. And then we dumped a little bit of fuel just to kind of remind the people on the ground, like, there's a couple fighters up here, and we're ready to pick a fight.
Yeah.
That was pretty much most of my career was just kind of customer service, Taliban or Iraqi customer service.
I love that. Love that thought. Customer service to the men on the ground.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's music to a Marine's ear on the
It
ground
is.
when things just aren't going right according to the mission.
To the plan.
Yeah, to the plan. Plan of attack. Plan of the day.
Yeah, the plan of the day. The plan's gone sideways. You call in
Yeah.
Harriers, we take care of the problem.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Nothing like it.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful scene, beautiful sound when it's on your side.
it is. Yes.
So, so you had this moment. You cost the taxpayers. I picked up on that $12 million plus for.
12.5, but who counts?
Was that a Boeing engine you said?
Rolls Royce engines.
That's right.
It's
Those
a
are
Rolls Royce
Rolls-Royce.
Pegasus engine. Yeah.
Man, not many people can say they totaled a Rolls Royce engine.
Oh, that was the only one.
All right, we got 13 minutes. Tell me some stories. Confession is good for the soul.
So the scariest moment in the aircraft. I had a couple of landings that were down to minimums in poor weather. Got the jet on deck. I had one night landing on the ship that scared me to the point where I literally got out of the jet. And I couldn't keep my hand steady. But the scariest flight I ever had was March 2012. I was wrapping up my second tour. I was the AMO, aircraft maintenance officer. I've been doing that for over 2 years, so I was pretty salty. Like I knew what I was doing. I do a lot of functional.
You had a few hours in a Cessna by that point.
Yeah,
right?
I had probably about 1,500 hours in the jet. So I was kind of at the point where I was like super confident I could get in the plane, and I knew everything. You always say this. I knew what was going on. And I did a lot of what's called functional check flights. So my Marines would work on maybe pull the engine out, drop a new engine in, or work on something that required an experienced old guy to take her up and go through a bunch of checks to make sure she was ready for the new guy. So my wife always hated these flights because you just don't know what you're going to get. You had some exciting moments, but this one day I take this jet out, and it was a brand new motor, and go up to 40,000 feet. And I do my turns, trying to make sure the engine's performing properly at 40,000 feet. Then I dive down to 25,000 feet, and about 100 miles away from Yuma. And what you're supposed to do at 25,000 feet is you go into a really hard turn to the left, and then halfway through the turn, you reverse it to make sure they put the wing on correctly, and then the systems are all going to work properly as you reverse. What I had failed to notice in my saltiness is that one wing was empty and one wing had not drained. So now I have this asymmetrical problem. So as I pull into the light wing and I pulled into the heavy wing and I reversed into the light wing, the plane's like, no, this is a very bad idea. And this is where airplanes talk back to you.
Yeah.
And so she departed control flight. It happens occasionally. I was like, okay, whatever. So I did it again. What does every good pilot? I'm like,
Damn
well,
it, I told you.
I was like, well, and it happened. So I trimmed her back up and I did it again. But this time when she departed, it departed very violently. And I was like, well, that's weird. So I went to idle, and then it happened again. And then it did it a third time so violent that I always flew with like a granola bar or a Snickers bar in my little nav bag just in case it was a long flight. And I distinctly remember seeing a Snickers bar like fly across my face. And I was like, well, that's weird. And then we went into a flat spin. And the motor shut off, and That's when things got
so
pretty.
The flat spin, the plane's just dropping like an egg out of
in
the
a
sky.
Harrier, basically what happens
You
is
got a camera there looking.
basically if this is the nose, the plane goes nose over ass, and it basically kind of. We call it falling leaf. It's essentially a flat spin where the airplane's just not flying. It's a rock, right?
Yeah.
And so I do all my procedures, and on the third iteration of this, I see a bunch of blue, and I stopped it, and I go face down. Now I see a bunch of dirt in my face. I can't breathe because the oxygen's generated off the motor, which isn't running. Nothing's working because the motor's not running. And I had a oh geez moment. Like literally, I'm at about 16,000 feet diving straight at the ground going, I don't think the engine.
And how fast?
I came out of that at about 180 knots, but rapidly accelerating. I was about 40 degrees nose low, and I was like, okay, well the motor's not running, so I get the emergency oxygen going. I shut the motor off, and I try to restart it.
And are all of those things procedural?
Procedural.
Like
so and this is
oxygen first.
Oxygen first. You gotta breathe.
Yeah.
So I pulled the green apple. I got the oxygen going. But this is all happening, which the story takes forever, as do most of my stories. But this is all happening. Like, I can tell you, like, it felt like an hour in the airplane as these things were going on. But this is all happening in seconds, right? So I look, I see 16,000 feet. I start doing all this stuff. I can hear the clacking of the igniters trying to get the motor to start up. I got the motor to start up probably around 7,000 feet as this mountain's getting bigger in my face. God. I leveled off at 4, and I'm actually like, I'm going to have to punch out of this thing.
What is your lowest altitude in a Harrier or for emergency?
10,000. I had blown through that because I was like, I'm going to save this airplane. And then I leveled off at about 4,000 or 5,000. I'm like, I'm going to have to get the nose up. I'm going to have to punch out of this thing. I'm going to have to give it back to the taxpayers. And then I hear this thing, and then she started singing. And so I get the motor coming up. I set 85%. I start dumping fuel, and I was actually in an Air Force range, and I'll never forget this. There's call sign Snake Eye. I go, hey, Snake Eye, Nightmare 01, emergency aircraft. So I'm climbing back up. I'm in an emergency profile, and I was like, hey, Snake Eye, I'm an emergency aircraft. I'm exiting to the west for Yuma. And he goes, oh, okay, declare, state your emergency. I said, well, my engine had failed, and I got her to relight. I'm headed home. And he goes, all right, good luck, little buddy. And I'm like, what? Okay, whatever. So, it's about a 20-minute flight back. I land, no big deal. I taxi off the end of the runway, I shut down, because I don't know really the state of the engine. Yeah. I don't want to taxi around if I don't have to. And I was totally cool as a cucumber until I shut down. I got out of the jet, my Marines are there, and I'm trying to act really cool around my junior Marines, and I literally, and I'm not exaggerating, could not take a cigarette and put it in my mouth. I was literally all over the place, and my Gunny Viz, grabs me and goes like, sir, come on, we got to get you out of the Marines. They don't want to, you can't break down in front of the Marines. Yeah. And no kidding, I ended up getting in my office and started break down crying, because the amount of adrenaline and all of that. Jeez. And we had a Rolls-Royce rep in our squadron, Mr. Peak, and he's been doing this for 30 years. And he pulls the data. He looks at it and goes, that's the most violent departure I've ever seen in my life. I was like, okay, well, I was in there. It was pretty violent. And we started kind of parsing through the data. And he looks at me and goes, tell me what you did. So I said, hey, I went to idle, and here's what I did. And he's like, that motor should have never started. What happened was there's these 2 blow-off valves. It was a compressor stall, and it was so violent, it actually blew these valves out so the motor doesn't explode. And he's like, that motor should have never started because you opened up those valves. And he's like, how did you get it started? I said, well, I did the normal procedures, and then I always practice if I couldn't get it, I'd go to manual fuel. And he was like, yeah, technically that motor should have never started. So it's funny. So we go through this. I file the paperwork. My CO's like, hey, you need to take a break, And I was like, no, sir, I'm fine. I'll go fly. I was supposed to fly the next day. I was like, no, I'll fly. He's like, no, you're not flying. You need a couple days off. Well, that night, my buddy calls me from another squadron and goes, hey, I can't do this functional check flight tomorrow morning at 07. Can you do it? I was like, yeah. Well, it might, I was like, yeah, I'm good. I can do it. And so I go and grab my gear. I don't tell a skipper, so I run to another squadron, and I jump. So I'm doing this brief, and this is the funniest part of the story. So this young lieutenant, I think he was a young captain, he's briefing me, telling me the weather. I'm drinking a cup of coffee. I'm like, gear's hanging off, pretty salty. And he's like, hey, just be really careful. Some guy had a flame out yesterday. I looked him dead in the eyes. I was like, that was me, dummy. And I walked out. And apparently, what he says, what I did, because he worked for me later when I was in 214. I threw my coffee cup in the trash and like stomped out of there. And he was like, "Sir, you are the scariest human being I ever met." Little do you know, I got in the jet and I was nervous. Very rarely have I ever gotten nervous. And I was sitting in the jet. I'm like, okay, you and me, we're going to do this dance. We're going to do it right.
That's crazy.
And the way I go do the sortie and I land and I walk past the CO's office and he's like, "Hey, didn't I tell you not to fly?" I'm like, "Well, I didn't fly for this squadron. You didn't say I couldn't fly for other squadrons."
Technicalities.
Sir, I didn't violate it. You said I can't fly on this schedule. That did not go over well.
So draw some correlation if you can for me. Like you've retired from the Marine Corps now.
Yeah.
You've had some pretty scary things in the cockpit of one of our nation's most awesome jets, and had life flash in front of your eyes in some of these crazy things. And we didn't even get into some of the missions.
No, we never did get into combat sorties.
And we can come back another day and have this. I want to do like on a 4th of July, like do
that'd be awesome.
Have a bunch of old salty dudes in here telling war stories. It would be cool that those that want to share. But with 4 minutes left on an episode today, tell me what's scary now. Like you get out and you don't have Big Daddy Papa Marine.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this on the drive over today.
Yeah, so I retired. I went on terminal leave at the end of June. And by the way, thank you guys for recording my retirement ceremony. It was awesome. I started my first civilian job in over 20 years. And I think the hardest thing, the scariest thing is looking for purpose again. Yeah. Because, the Marine Corps, I always knew, even if I wasn't flying and supporting Marines on the deck, I knew I had my administrative duties, the executive officer of 214, I had a whole squadron of Marines that, so-and-so didn't get paid right, or so-and-so having issues at the barracks. Like, I really prided myself on making sure the Marines were always taken care of first. Yeah. And now I don't have that. I don't have that problem anymore. Problem, air quotes. So now finding that purpose again in my life, that's scary. It's hard because I work for Southern, who's being acquired by Atlas. Great company. They take care of me. I show up to work. I do my thing, and then I leave. Yeah. And they don't call me. Yeah. I don't get, the midnight phone call from the duty officer saying, "Sir, we got 2 Marines that got in trouble," or, "Hey, we got an officer that got in a car wreck," or, "Hey, we got 4 jets stranded in Phoenix." Like, there's no complex problems for me to fix anymore. And my wife is tired of me fixing all her problems. So finding that purpose in my life has been a real challenge for me, like personally. So what do you do to try to overcome that? Like what's a way to? So what recommendations would you give young guys getting out now? So I would tell guys, even if it's the smoothest transition, like my transition was like picture perfect, right? Like I had a job lined up. I was starting while I was on terminal leave. I would tell them a few things that I screwed up was, first of all, take more than about 2-3 weeks off. Yeah. You really do need to decompress and unwind. And I didn't do that, and I regret it. I should have taken 60 days off. I took closer to 30, but I actually needed it more than I realized at the time. And I would tell other guys, even if you have a job that you like, which I do, find something else in your life. Yeah. So I've been working out a lot more. I'm spending a lot more time with my kids. But have a plan. Have a plan for your mental health, because we don't talk about that. We just don't. Right. And I'm lucky to have guys like you where I can kind of talk to you, and my wife listens, and it's good because when you get older, you don't realize the value of mental health until it's too late. Yeah. I actually just recently this year's been tough for me personally. I had 2 Marines kill themselves. Jeez. Yeah, it's pretty tragic. But it woke me up to mental health. I'm like, that could happen to anyone. Yeah. The 2 Marines that took their lives were some of the most solid Marines that I've ever worked with. And then one day I get a phone call, "Hey, Sergeant Jacobs is not with us anymore." I'm like, what? So we have a big deal. That's not only in the Marine Corps, it's happening in the Army, Air Force. And we still haven't really found a common denominator other than guys just aren't talking to each other about what they're struggling with. And I will give credit. I didn't understand this at the time when I was on active duty, but I will tell you this generation is a lot more in tune with how they feel. Yeah. And some of the issues, because old crusty guys like me, like, I don't want to talk about your feelings. Let's just accomplish mission and go drink a beer and, stuff those feelings just deep down. And I just tell people now, I'm like, look, man, if you want to talk, just start talking. Find someone. It doesn't have to be another service member. Yeah. It just can be anyone, or write it down, or read, or PT. Keep your brain active. It's hard transitioning out of the service, especially after 20 years. And I mean, I don't know what it's like after 4 or 8 years, but I was going to get out at 12-year mark, and the thought of getting out scared me so much I stayed in. And now that I'm out, I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, man, this is scary.
One of the best things I think you can do for therapy, in my personal opinion, is ask lots of questions of other people.
Yes.
And just keep asking questions that helps you find a center, helps you find center with yourself by feeling out how other people have dealt with circumstances, with tragedy, with opportunity. And, you know, one of the things I would say to troops out there, and we're talking about this today, is I would 100% concur with you. Find somebody to talk to. Find a trusted advisor, and it doesn't have to be financial. It doesn't have to be your pastor. It doesn't have, but somebody that you can trust with information that if it can be another old salty Marine or it can be a sailor, talk through it. It's just like finding your wingman.
It is hard, and it is not admitting to failure. I will tell you that. Wounded Warriors, Military One Source. There are so many agencies out there, other than your brothers and pastors. There are professionals. I'm telling you, if you are thinking about getting out, have a financial plan. Yeah. Have a physical fitness plan, because you're old and you're going to get fat.
And 51, you start having atrophy.
What are you talking about? You look good. You look good for 57. Would you say? No, sorry, 51.
I don't look a day over 70, right?
You know, I had a CO, and he's a very wise man. He told me, he's like, life is like a bar stool. You have to have a physical plan, you have to have a mental plan, and you have to have a financial plan.
Three-legged stool.
A three-legged stool. Without all three of those, that is a worthless piece of furniture.
Right.
So you have to have that financial plan for you and your family. You and I have talked about that, and you're an expert in that. You have to have a physical plan, because when you get out, if you get fat, that's going to start hurting your emotional plans.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks.
But if you don't acknowledge all threes, and if you're not strong in all three, and the emotional, mental part can involve spirituality, if that's what you believe in. If not. But I've trended back to going to church, you know, being more studious in that. But you have to have all three of those to be well-rounded. And if you're struggling in one of those, you're going to struggle in all three.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. And, you know, thank you for sharing and bringing that up, because I think that's the big part of mental health, is just not talking about it, not saying, hey, you know what, I'm vulnerable. And most Marines do not like to admit.
We are turtles when it comes to that.
Yeah.
We just rely on that hard outer shell, but we have a soft, nougaty center that a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah, I would attest to that. Most Marines I know, once you really get to know them, you know, they're some of the most loyal, softy,
totally
good people that you would ever meet.
Yeah, I really encourage people to get over that fear of failure, because it's not failure. If anything, I would tell you success by acknowledging you have a problem.
Yeah.
And saying, you can't solve every problem by yourself.
I always use the concept of my wife and daughter, who make amazing chocolate chip cookies. I don't know if you've had any of their cookies yet.
I'm not a big sweets guy, because I'm as sweet as I'm going to get.
You will be after having these. You know, I like to make homemade ice cream stuff like that. But Kathleen and Sarah's chocolate chip cookies, there's an important ingredient that if you don't have it in the cookie, it just doesn't taste right. And it's weird to tell you, it's salt.
Yeah.
So salt by itself, you know, you're like, you know, this ingredient that helps, you know, keep me hydrated and keep my electrolytes right.
Yeah.
But by itself, you don't think anything. But man, when you put salt on anything, when you take this weird ingredient that I attribute salt to by itself, feels like failure. But when you take that little nugget of life and add it to any other recipe, it makes it taste amazing. In balance. Yeah, out of balance, too much, too little.
Yeah.
But I think every position in life has to be littered with a little bit of salt, or AKA failure, to make it taste sweet.
100%. I will tell you, I started this session with, I've had a very blessed career. I've failed miserably several times.
Would you want to fly with a pilot who's never experienced an emergency or something that raised his blood pressure and made him perform?
Absolutely
You
not.
actually practice that, right?
We do.
I practice stalls in this little Cessna.
Yeah. And so I was doing that flight instruction, and I actually had a student say, why do you really harp on these stalls? Like, I've done it. We've completed it. I say, look, man, if you can do it now when your blood pressure is not up, and you can do it perfectly now, when all heck breaks loose and
you can say hell in this podcast.
Okay, sweet. Thank you. When all hell breaks loose and things are hitting the fan and things are going sideways, I need you to remember the basics and go to brainstem power.
Yeah.
And if you can go to brainstem power and fix this problem,
which is muscle memory.
It's muscle memory. Yeah. I call it brainstem power because we don't think about breathing and our heartbeat, right? That's all come off of your brainstem.
Yeah.
That's how flying.
Point.
That's how flying should be.
Yeah.
Flying should be. I know when the airplane starts shaking and I hear that stall horn. Yeah. I do this, and this because Luke told me this, and hey, I need to stomp on the right pedal, because of this.
Yeah.
If you can do it well now, and you can do it perfectly under no pressure, when the pressure cooker's on, that's when you have to be perfect because things are not in your control, and we have to bring them back into our control.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always hesitate to, when guys are like, oh, I've never had any real emergencies. I'm like, then you really haven't flown an airplane.
Yeah. Yeah. We're getting to the excellent stuff in this podcast an hour into it. So we're running low on time, but, we're talking
you just
about
cut all the high school stuff out because, I don't want to be all Al Bundy on you.
So if you were, Marine Corps, we had, even back when I was in, I think it's still a requirement now that every commandant's done this, I think, since General Gray. But the Marines had required reading.
Oh, yes.
So if you were telling young guys listening to this podcast today, or even old salts, what are some of your top reads that you would tell folks to pick up?
Blink.
Blink.
Yeah, Blink and Freakonomics. And then there's Super Freakonomics. That changed the way I kind of think and the way I attacked problems.
Okay.
Because the guy who basically writes this book, I can't remember his name. I'm not a big name
The
guy.
guys will find out for us.
Yeah,
we have the fact checkers.
We have
people to do that.
But yeah, so those are great books because they really challenge the way you perceive the world and how what looks like a common problem is actually a very complex problem, and it really challenges you to think and challenge yourself to new problems. The other book that I read was Start With Why.
Start with why.
Yeah, Start With Why. Because
so Blink, Freakonomics, Super Freakonomics, and Start With Why.
Start With Why. I like reading. I like reading things outside my comfort zone. I am a huge historian. I love to read.
History's fun.
I like reading it because you can glean stuff. I just finished this fascinating book about T.E. Lawrence, Lawrence of Arabia. Great book.
Really?
Yeah, really good book. It focuses on how this Army major with no previous, he was just basically gifted the rank due to his education, how he basically shaped the world in 1919 to what we see today. He helped liberate the Saudis, what we call Saudis now, the Jordanians. He helped create Israel, Palestine, all these things. This one guy did it. And he did it because of passion and understanding of people. So it's a really good book, fascinating character. Not a lot of people know about him, but most of the success and issues that we see in 2020 can be tied directly to his
name of that book again?
It was. I'd have to go get my phone, but it was go read any book on Lawrence of Arabia, and it really delves into the Middle East.
I want to pick that up.
I like to kind of get out there, and then go read Pappy Boyington's book. It's a great book by a Marine aviator, but it really talks about he was a eccentric guy, liked to drink, liked to fight, and then he got shot down, and it really focuses on his prisoner of war time and on the deep sacrifices he had to make and the mental flexibility, toughness that he had, and then. I forget the other book that I just read. It was they ended up sharing a cell together. He was the Olympic runner that was captured by the Japanese, and then I wish I could remember the name of the book right now. I didn't know I had to know all this stuff.
Yeah, we always like to surprise you. It catches people off guard, and then you get the real things that impact you.
Yeah, and then
you're not talking about Broken, are you?
Yeah, Broken. Yes. Yeah. Great book. Really, man.
Yeah, they made a great movie out of that.
Well, the movie. is like skimming the wave tops.
You know, there was another podcaster I had on the show. I think it was Mike Zeiders recommended Broken.
Yes.
Or maybe he was reading it one day. I saw him at lunch, and he was reading that book, and he said it was fascinating.
Oh, yeah. Fascinating book. I mean, really well written. It flows really well. But then you're like, man, I thought I was tough. I mean, this guy was tough.
Yeah.
Like the dictionary definition of tough. I love reading. I try to read a book a month.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do. Even if they're short little books. You know, Marine Corps reading list, Message Garcia. If you have not read Message Garcia, and I don't care if you're in business, I don't care if you're in customer service or in the sister services. I had my last tour. I was with the Navy, and I made all my sailors read it.
That's awesome.
Because it's 100 pages. I mean, it's short, it's to the point, but it's, hey, what do I know? Who needs to know it, and how do I tell them? I mean, it's like the most simple story in the world.
Wow.
But it's a powerful message. So
that's awesome.
So,
well, dude, thanks for coming on the show and sharing with us, and the last 10 minutes of our podcast, just talking about our troops, and the reading list, and if you have mental health issues, please go get help. Yes. And we'll put some resources out there on our podcast, Ian. Let's make sure we do that for folks to get help and talk to someone. Share your stories, and if somebody judges you for where you're at, just punch them square in the face. You'll probably feel better. There's some advice for you.
You might get a little consequences.
You might get a little consequences, but
sometimes life sometimes hits you in the face.
Yeah, Mike Tyson said, and we used to have this, but I think somebody's trademarked it now. But everybody's got a plan
to get punched.
Punched in the face,
and that is 100% true. But I will pile on. Life is a team sport, man.
Yeah.
You cannot do this by yourself.
Yeah, the Marine wives out there. Shout out to those ladies, and even Marine husbands whose wives are
Marine spouses.
Marine spouses. We got to do
2020. Thank God for Amy.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
She really pushed me, and I would not be here.
See, my objective is to make every guest cry, especially Marines.
I'm not crying. It's just super hot.
It's just super. Yeah, these lights are horrible.
Yeah, they are.
Hey, Lieutenant Colonel Jacobs.
Thank you.
Retired, but never retired. Always Marine.
Yeah, always Marine. Thank you for having me. This was a real blessing. I was looking forward to this today. So
Semper Fi, double dog.
Semper Fi, devil.
Yeah, salute to you.
Yeah.
Cheers.
All right, let's get a drink.
All right, let's do it.
Well, that's fun.
That was really fun. No, that was cool. That was one of my favorite podcasts. I got to tell you, I'm not just bullshit.